Nathan Williams felt an overwhelming sense of pride and relief as he walked through the gates of Greenfield Academy with his wife Emily and their 10-year-old daughter, Maya. It was the very start of a new school year, and a golden morning sun illuminated the school grounds, casting long shadows on the manicured lawns and well-kept playground. Nestled in an affluent neighborhood known for its progressive values, Greenfield Academy seemed to offer everything Nathan and Emily could ever wish for in a school. For weeks, they had researched schools all over the city. They pored over reviews, consulted friends, and pored over glossy brochures. Greenfield stood out for its diversity, boasting a student body from varied backgrounds and cultures. Teachers there were not just educators, they were mentors, guides, and cheerleaders, committed to nurturing each child's potential. Academic excellence was a priority, but so was emotional well-being. The school promised an environment where every student could feel safe, valued, and supported. As they stood with Maya at the entrance on that first day, Nathan and Emily exchanged a hopeful glance. Their daughter had been through a lot already. Maya was bright, curious, and full of ideas that sometimes took even her parents by surprise. But in previous schools, she'd encountered subtle, yet painful acts of exclusion. She knew what it felt like to be seen as different, as if her presence needed an explanation. And Nathan, a father who saw so much of himself in his little girl, had vowed that he would find her a place where she could feel like she truly belonged. Maya's transition into Greenfield seemed flawless. In her new class, she immediately stood out for her curiosity and love of learning. She wasn't afraid to ask questions, to experiment, to lead group projects. Mrs. Turner, her homeroom teacher, was especially taken with her. The teacher would often call home to report on Maya's accomplishments, describing her as a bright star. These words filled Nathan with pride. He could hear the sincerity in Mrs. Turner's voice, the enthusiasm as she recounted stories of Maya organizing study groups, volunteering to tutor her friends in math, and even helping to clean up the art room without anyone asking her to. Greenfield became more than just a school. It was a sanctuary. Maya thrived, her confidence blooming as she formed friendships and immersed herself in activities that showcased her talents. She joined the chess club, dabbled in theater, and even took up the violin, something she had always dreamed of but never had the courage to try. Nathan and Emily often stayed up late talking, their hearts swelling with happiness. "It feels like she's finally found her place," Emily would say, her voice soft with gratitude. Nathan would nod, his gaze lingering on Maya's trophies and certificates neatly displayed on her shelf. They could finally breathe. For 2 years, the Williams family lived with a peace they had never known before. Maya's laughter filled their home, her energy infectious. She took on new challenges with a resilience that only grew stronger. Her teachers continued to sing her praises, and the principal even sent a letter home, highlighting her contributions to the school community. The message was clear. Maya was not just accepted at Greenfield, she was celebrated. But as the third year began, Maya found herself assigned to a new homeroom teacher, Ms. Hayes. Nathan and Emily didn't think much of it at first. After all, every teacher at Greenfield shared the school's values, or so they believed. But then, a subtle shift began. Small things, hardly noticeable at first. Maya's laughter was less frequent, her spirit a bit dimmer. The safe haven that Greenfield Academy had been was beginning to feel unfamiliar, like an illusion that was slowly, painfully slipping away. Nathan watched his daughter, feeling the stirrings of a worry he had hoped he'd never feel again. Greenfield Academy had promised them so much: diversity, acceptance, understanding. But Nathan was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, all that glitters wasn't gold. The question gnawed at him: had they been wrong? The changes began subtly. So subtle that, at first, Nathan and Emily thought Maya was simply going through a phase. After all, it was a new year, a new teacher, and she was a growing child. They chalked it up to preteen restlessness. But the small shifts in Maya's behavior gradually became harder to ignore. Maya was always the first one up in the mornings, rushing to pack her school bag and insisting on getting to class early to help her teachers. Now, she seemed to drag her feet as they approached the school. Her goodbyes grew shorter, her usual spark replaced with a strange reluctance. Instead of excitedly recounting her day during family dinners, she grew distant, offering clipped, vague answers to questions. When Nathan asked her about school, her answers were almost robotic. "It's fine, Dad. Just school stuff," she would say, forcing a half-hearted smile that didn't reach her eyes. He could see the shadows in her expression, but each time he pressed, Maya would look down and retreat further into silence. Emily was the first to pick up on Maya's clinginess at home. One evening, as they were clearing up after dinner, she noticed Maya slipping away from the kitchen, holding something close to her chest. When she looked closer, she saw that Maya was clutching her old stuffed animal, a small, scruffy bear she hadn't carried around in years. The bear had been Maya's companion when she was little, her comfort during thunderstorms, and her trusted friend through rough days. Seeing it back in her daughter's hands felt like a silent alarm bell. "Maya, honey?" Emily asked gently one night as she tucked her daughter in. "Is everything okay? You know you can talk to me, right?" Maya hesitated, her fingers anxiously tracing the worn edges of her stuffed bear. "It's fine, Mom," she mumbled, looking away. Emily glanced at Nathan over her shoulder, her eyes filled with worry. She could sense that something was eating away at their little girl, but Maya was closing herself off, retreating into a shell they hadn't seen since she'd started at Greenfield. Then, there was that evening at the dinner table that Nathan would never forget. Maya sat across from him, her head down, mechanically eating her food in silence. Nathan watched her, his father's intuition screaming that something was very wrong. Maya's face was pale, her usual glow absent. She ate with an intensity that Nathan had never seen before, as if she were starving. She devoured her plate quickly, her eyes flicking nervously between bites. It was more than just hunger. Her actions were tinged with a desperation that sent chills down his spine. "Maya, sweetheart, slow down," he said softly. "Is everything all right?" Maya didn't answer. She pushed her plate away abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor as she got up to leave the table. She murmured a hurried, "Good night," not even meeting their eyes as she disappeared down the hallway to her room. Nathan and Emily exchanged a long, worried look, both feeling helpless. This wasn't their bubbly, joyful daughter. This was a child who seemed to be shrinking before their eyes, her spirit dimmed by something dark and unknown. That night, as Nathan lay awake, replaying the evening in his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were losing Maya to something he couldn't see, something lurking beneath the surface. His mind drifted back to memories he had hoped to bury, the taunts Maya endured at her old school, the times she came home crying after being teased for her race, her hair, her culture. He remembered the promises they'd made to protect her, to shield her from that kind of pain. And yet, here they were again. The following week, Maya's distance only deepened. She avoided her friends, staying home instead of going to her usual after-school chess club meetings. The joy she'd once found in her studies was replaced by a tense silence. She stopped volunteering to help in the kitchen, retreating to her room as soon as she got home. One night, as they sat in the living room, Nathan finally voiced what he and Emily had been thinking. "Something's wrong, Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just school stress. This is, I don't know. I think it might be more than that." Emily nodded, her own worry reflected in his eyes. "We need to find out what's going on, Nathan. She won't tell us, but maybe we can help her without her knowing." Nathan nodded, resolved. "I'll drop her off tomorrow. Stay close by. I just need to see for myself." The next morning, Nathan watched Maya with a heavy heart as he drove her to school. She barely spoke, staring out the window with vacant eyes. Once they reached Greenfield Academy, she gave him a small wave, and he forced a smile, his heart twisting as she disappeared through the school doors. But Nathan didn't drive away. Instead, he parked his car at a distance and waited, his eyes fixed on the playground. The bell rang, and he saw students pour out, laughing and chasing one another. Maya stood on the edge, her small figure separated from the others. She watched them but didn't join in, her face solemn, her gaze shifting nervously toward the school building every few minutes. Nathan's heart tightened with each passing second. This wasn't the joyful Maya he knew, the girl who had once been the center of every group, leading games and making new friends. This was a child afraid to take up space, afraid to be seen. Determined to find out more, Nathan decided to slip into the school during lunch. Blending into the crowd of parents and staff milling around, he made his way to the cafeteria. His stomach was in knots, his mind racing with questions he couldn't answer. As he neared the cafeteria, his steps slowed, and his heart dropped as he saw Maya. She was sitting at the far corner of the room, alone at a table. Her shoulders were hunched, her face turned down, as she toyed with the food on her plate, barely touching it. Nathan took a step forward, and that's when he saw it. A fried frog splayed grotesquely on her tray. The sight froze him in place. His mind raced, a storm of anger, confusion, and heartbreak swirling inside him. He took a shaky breath and moved toward his daughter, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a bad day. This wasn't just a phase. It was something far worse than he'd feared. The sight of his daughter sitting alone with that appalling meal was a revelation that struck Nathan to his core. He had never imagined anything like this. The absurdity, the cruelty. What teacher would do something so vile? Nathan's grip tightened around his phone as he debated his next move. This was beyond anything he'd prepared himself for. He knelt beside Maya, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched, her eyes wide with surprise, and a flash of relief passed over her face. Her tiny frame looked even smaller, slouched forward with shame as she pushed the food around her plate with a plastic fork. "Maya," he whispered softly, careful not to startle her. "What is this?" Her lower lip quivered, her eyes darting around the cafeteria to see if anyone else was watching. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Miss Hayes, she said it's what people like us eat." Her eyes filled with shame as she spoke, as if somehow she was at fault for the cruelty she'd endured. Nathan felt a knot of rage form in his stomach. He pulled Maya close, his hand shaking slightly as he patted her back. "I'm here, Maya. You don't have to eat this, okay? You don't ever have to eat anything like this." He straightened up, his mind racing as he considered his options. There was no way he could let this slide. This wasn't just a thoughtless mistake. It was an intentional act of humiliation, of exclusion. The very thought of it filled him with rage and disbelief. As he stood there, his mind flashed back to the moments leading up to Maya's transfer into Miss Hayes' classroom. How quickly it had happened, how little information they'd been given about the reason behind the change. But now, everything fell into place. Miss Hayes, with her barely concealed disapproval, her cold stares, her subtle but pointed comments about certain students needing to fit in better. It had all seemed odd at the time, but he dismissed it, giving the school the benefit of the doubt. Not anymore. He needed answers, and he needed them now. Nathan quickly dialed 911. He steadied his voice, barely able to contain the fury bubbling inside. "I need to report a hate crime," he told the operator. "Yes. At Greenfield Academy, my daughter was targeted by her teacher." Within minutes, the police arrived at the school. The officers, looking serious and focused, stepped into the cafeteria, their presence halting the usual noise and chatter. Students glanced at one another, whispers spreading as the officers approached Nathan and Maya. Miss Hayes appeared at the doorway, her expression unreadable. Her gaze flitted over Nathan, then shifted coldly to Maya. She crossed her arms, her face an unreadable mask of indifference as she waited, unfazed by the commotion. When the officers approached her, she merely shrugged, dismissing Nathan's claims with a barely hidden smirk. "It was just a joke," Miss Hayes said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Nothing more. It's a shame how oversensitive some people are these days." But Nathan wasn't going to let her hide behind dismissive words. He pointed to the cafeteria tray on the table, the twisted meal she'd served his daughter sitting as evidence of her actions. Maya, still clutching his hand, looked up at him, her face shadowed with worry. The officer shook his head as he inspected the tray. "This isn't a joke," he muttered, disgust clear in his expression. He turned to Miss Hayes, his eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, you need to understand the gravity of this situation." Miss Hayes scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "It was a cultural experience," she sneered. "Nothing harmful. They're making a big deal out of nothing." Nathan's anger flared. "A cultural experience? This isn't about culture. It's about dehumanizing my daughter," he spat, his voice low and furious. "You thought you could get away with it because she's a child. But she's not alone, and I won't let you humiliate her." The principal, Mr. Roberts, arrived at the scene, his face a mixture of embarrassment and unease. He glanced at the officers, then at Miss Hayes, clearly disturbed by what was unfolding in his cafeteria. "Miss Hayes, can you explain what's going on here?" he asked, struggling to maintain control over the situation. Miss Hayes rolled her eyes, her voice dripping with contempt. "Mr. Roberts, this father is blowing everything out of proportion. I was simply introducing a unique lunch experience for the students. How was I supposed to know they'd be so sensitive about it?" Mr. Roberts turned to Nathan, his tone apologetic but cautious. "Mr. Williams, please, I assure you we will address this. I'll personally see to it that Miss Hayes is put on administrative leave while we investigate." But Nathan wasn't satisfied. He looked directly at Mr. Roberts, his voice resolute. "An apology and a temporary leave aren't enough. This isn't just about today. It's about ensuring no child is subjected to this again. We trusted this school with Maya. That trust is gone." The officer spoke up, informing Miss Hayes that she would be placed under investigation for her actions, and she reluctantly agreed to leave the premises. But Nathan knew this battle wasn't over. As he guided Maya away from the cafeteria, he made a promise to himself and to his daughter. He would make sure that no other child would ever have to experience what she had. This wasn't just about Miss Hayes. It was about making the school face the deeper issue that had allowed such cruelty to take place. He looked down at Maya, his heart aching for her pain, but he could already see the spark returning to her eyes. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "This is just the beginning, Maya. We're going to make things right." The decision to confront the school had been immediate, but the path was far from straightforward. Nathan spent restless nights reviewing everything he'd seen and heard, piecing together each incident like a puzzle that revealed an unsettling picture. He and Emily watched Maya carefully, but she remained guarded, her once vibrant energy dulled. When Nathan mentioned going back to school for answers, Maya became uneasy, shrinking inward, as if afraid that more confrontation would only worsen her experience. Nathan reassured her, promising that he would be as gentle as possible, and above all, that she wouldn't be alone. The next morning, determined and weary, Nathan arranged to meet the principal. Mr. Roberts, already alerted by the police report, looked rattled when Nathan walked into his office, but he feigned a professional calm. Nathan couldn't ignore the discomfort in the man's eyes as he greeted him, clearly unnerved by the potential fallout. He gestured for Nathan to sit. "Mr. Williams," the principal began carefully, "I want to personally assure you that we take these matters very seriously. I'm here to listen to any concerns you have and to see what we can do to resolve this." Nathan's gaze was steely. "Mr. Roberts, this isn't about resolving a misunderstanding. My daughter was humiliated, singled out, and targeted in a way that no child should ever experience. I want to understand how this could happen in a place like Greenfield Academy." The principal exhaled slowly, and his face softened slightly, as though he wanted to appear understanding. Yet Nathan could see the hesitation lurking behind his eyes. "We are investigating, as you know, but Miss Hayes is one of our tenured teachers, and up until now, her record has been spotless. I assure you this will be handled appropriately." Nathan was ready to reply when he heard the faint echo of laughter from a classroom down the hall. It struck him, a stark contrast to the quiet tension between him and the principal, and he was reminded of why he was here. Every child deserved to be safe, to feel welcome. He looked back at Mr. Roberts, his voice calm but unwavering. "With all due respect, Mr. Roberts, this isn't a question of tenure. It's a question of Maya's safety and dignity. This isn't just a minor incident. It's about the systemic issues that allowed Miss Hayes to believe she could act this way without consequence." Mr. Roberts cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand, Mr. Williams. We'll do everything we can. I'll ensure Miss Hayes is placed on leave while we conduct a thorough review. And I'll personally check in with Maya's new teacher to make sure she feels supported moving forward." But Nathan wasn't appeased. "A leave of absence isn't enough. I want assurances that this won't happen to another child. That changes will be made so that no teacher feels free to let their biases impact a child's experience here." The principal glanced down at his notes, nodding, trying to stay composed. "We'll be implementing new sensitivity training for all staff. I'll make it my priority." The words felt hollow, yet Nathan could see a glimmer of recognition in Mr. Roberts' expression. Perhaps he, too, was realizing that this was bigger than just one incident. As he left the principal's office, Nathan glanced back, catching a fleeting look of sympathy on Mr. Roberts' face before he turned away. But Nathan was far from reassured. This wasn't over yet. Nathan stepped out of the principal's office, feeling a storm of emotions roiling within him. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on his shoulders. He needed to act, and he needed to act fast. There was no way he could allow Maya's pain to be brushed aside as just another school incident. She was just a child, his child, who had been subjected to an insidious act of racism, and he felt an urgent responsibility to speak for her when she could not. He pulled out his phone and took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. The numbers felt heavy under his thumb, but he pressed call. As the line connected, he could hear the familiar ringing sound, each tone reverberating in his mind like a countdown. This was it. This was the moment he had to reclaim his daughter's dignity. 911, what is your emergency? The operator's voice was calm and professional, but Nathan felt his heart racing. I need to report a hate crime, he said, his voice shaking slightly but steady enough to convey his seriousness. My daughter was served a meal at her school, Greenfield Academy, that was not only inappropriate but deeply offensive and racist. It's unacceptable. Can you provide more details, sir? The operator asked. Nathan felt a surge of emotion as he recounted the horrifying incident, his words tumbling out in a rush. My daughter is biracial, and her teacher, Miss Bath Hayes, served her a fried frog for lunch, implying that it was something people like us eat. This is a clear act of discrimination and racism, and I cannot stand by and let it go unnoticed. He could hear the operator's pen scratching against paper as she took notes. We're dispatching officers to your location. Please stay on the line and provide your name and contact information. Nathan complied, all the while feeling a mix of dread and determination. He knew that this wasn't just about him or Maya. It was about addressing a problem that plagued many schools across the country. It was about holding those in power accountable for their actions. Minutes later, the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they approached Greenfield Academy. Nathan stepped outside, his heart pounding as he waited for the police to arrive. He could see parents and children milling about, blissfully unaware of the chaos brewing beneath the surface. But as soon as the squad cars pulled up, a palpable shift occurred. The playful chatter hushed and curious eyes turned toward the commotion. Two officers stepped out, their demeanor professional but friendly, immediately assessing the situation. Nathan approached them, his pulse racing with a mixture of anxiety and urgency. He led them into the cafeteria, his heart racing with anticipation. Over here, he urged, pointing toward Maya, who sat alone in the corner, her eyes cast down, still grappling with the trauma of what had just occurred. The officers approached her gently. Maya, Nathan said softly, kneeling beside her. These officers want to help you. The little girl looked up, her tear-streaked face a haunting testament to the pain she had endured. One of the officers, Officer Martinez, knelt beside her, his voice calm and reassuring. Hi there, Maya. We're here to listen to you. Can you tell us what happened? Nathan watched as Maya hesitated, glancing at him and then at the officers. But with her father's encouragement, she began to speak, her small voice trembling but resolute. Miss Hayes said that this is what we eat. She gestured toward the plate that still sat untouched on the table, the grotesque fried frog, an ugly reminder of the day's events. The second officer, Officer Taylor, frowned deeply as she listened. That's really unfair, Maya. You shouldn't have to eat anything that makes you feel bad about yourself. As they spoke, Nathan felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps justice would prevail. Maya was being heard, and her truth was finally surfacing in a space where it mattered. The officers exchanged concerned glances, clearly understanding the seriousness of the situation. After they gathered all the necessary information, Nathan felt a swell of determination. I'm not going to let this go, he said firmly to the officers. I need you to file a report, and I want to make sure that the school takes this seriously. This cannot happen again. My daughter, and every other child, deserves to feel safe and respected. Officer Martinez nodded. We'll ensure that your concerns are documented and taken seriously. It's crucial that we address this kind of behavior. It's not just about punishing one individual, it's about changing the culture that allows this to happen. Nathan felt the weight of his words as he shared his vision for change. It wasn't merely about addressing this one incident. It was about ensuring that future generations of students, especially children of color, would not have to endure similar experiences. As the officers left to speak with the school principal, Nathan turned back to Maya, who was still looking down at the table. He gently lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. Maya, you did really well. You're so brave for speaking up. I know this is hard, but we're going to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Maya nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Do you think she'll get in trouble? Nathan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his responsibility as a father. I don't know what will happen to Ms. Hayes, but I promise you that we're going to make sure she understands that what she did is wrong. And we're going to work together to make your school a better place. With that promise hanging in the air, Nathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. This battle was just beginning, but he was determined to see it through. For Maya, for every child who felt out of place, and for a future where no one had to suffer in silence. The atmosphere in the cafeteria was thick with tension as Nathan waited for Principal Roberts to arrive. Maya sat quietly, her small hand gripping his, her face still pale from the ordeal. A handful of teachers had gathered near the entrance, casting furtive glances toward them, their expressions a mix of concern and confusion. Nathan could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but he was too focused on protecting his daughter to care. When Principal Roberts finally entered the cafeteria, his face was drawn and serious. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Nathan and Maya, and he quickly made his way over. Nathan, he said, his voice measured, I understand there's been a serious incident. Nathan stood, his anger bubbling just beneath the surface. You can say that again, Mr. Roberts. Your teacher served my daughter a grotesque meal, and it wasn't just a mistake, it was a blatant act of racism. The principal's expression shifted, and Nathan could see the gears turning in his mind. I assure you, we take these allegations seriously. I'll need to speak with Ms. Hayes and gather all the facts. Facts? Nathan interrupted, his voice rising. What facts do you need? You saw what was served to my daughter, a fried frog, and the implication that she should eat it because of her race. How is that not a clear-cut case of discrimination? Principal Roberts opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Maya's small voice piped up. Why did she say that, Mr. Roberts? She asked, her innocent tone laced with confusion. Why did Miss Hayes say that I eat frogs? The principal knelt down to her level, attempting to soften his response. I don't know, Maya. I wish I could tell you that it was just a mistake, and that no one would ever mean to hurt you. But sometimes adults don't think before they speak. It's not an excuse, but it's a reality. Nathan felt a mixture of rage and despair as he watched his daughter's confusion deepen. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a reflection of a systemic issue that had wormed its way into a supposedly safe space. This is not just about Ms. Hayes, Nathan said firmly. This is about the culture at Greenfield Academy. How can you guarantee that this won't happen again? What measures will you put in place to ensure that every child feels safe and valued? Roberts nodded, recognizing the weight of Nathan's words. I understand your concerns, and we will conduct a thorough investigation. We will hold a meeting with staff, and I assure you, this will not go unnoticed. That's not good enough, Nathan pressed. There needs to be accountability. A simple meeting won't change the fact that my daughter is feeling unsafe in her own school. What about the other kids who might be experiencing similar things? Before the principal could respond, Officer Martinez returned, having just spoken with Ms. Hayes. We've taken her statement, he said, his voice steady but firm. She maintains that this was intended as a joke, but we're not here to decide intent. What's clear is that the impact of her actions was harmful. Nathan felt a surge of anger. A joke? A joke? This isn't a matter of humor. This is a child's well-being we're talking about. How can you let that kind of behavior slide? Principal Roberts stepped in, his tone now more serious. Nathan, I understand your anger, and I share it. I will ensure that this incident is taken seriously at all levels. We cannot allow this type of behavior to continue. It's unacceptable, and I will work with the board to implement training on cultural sensitivity and anti-racism for all staff. Training isn't enough, Nathan argued. There needs to be a system in place for reporting these incidents and protecting our children from retaliation. We need to create an environment where kids can speak up without fear. Maya looked up at her father, her eyes wide as she absorbed the gravity of the conversation. Nathan knelt beside her again, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I'm going to fight for you, Maya. For all the kids who have ever felt like they didn't belong, you're not alone in this. Principal Roberts nodded, finally understanding the depth of the situation. You're right, Nathan. This isn't just a one-time issue. It's part of a larger problem, and we need to confront it head-on. We'll work together to make Greenfield Academy a truly inclusive environment. I'll reach out to community leaders and educators who specialize in diversity training to develop a comprehensive plan. Nathan took a deep breath, feeling the tension begin to ease slightly. I appreciate that, but I want to see real change, and I want to be involved in this process. I won't rest until I know that Maya and every other child will feel safe here. As they spoke, Nathan's resolve solidified. The ugly truth was now laid bare, but together they could work toward a brighter future. As Principal Roberts made a promise to address the systemic issues within the school, Nathan knew that this was just the beginning of a long fight for justice. Not just for Maya, but for every child who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for the Williams family. Nathan and Emily watched as Maya struggled to process the traumatic events that had unfolded at Greenfield Academy. She often retreated to her room, her vibrant spirit dulled by the weight of fear and confusion. But amidst the pain, a flicker of resilience began to emerge, igniting a spark within Nathan and Emily that compelled them to act. One evening, as they sat together on the living room couch, Nathan turned to Maya. I know you're hurting, sweetheart, he began gently, but we can't let what happened at school define you. You have a voice, and we can use it to make a difference. Maya looked up, her eyes reflecting both sadness and curiosity. What do you mean, Dad? We can speak out against what happened. We can tell our story and encourage others to share theirs, Nathan explained. It's important to show everyone that racism, in any form, is unacceptable. Together, we can advocate for change, not just for you, but for other kids who might be facing similar challenges. With her parents' encouragement, Maya slowly began to understand the power of her experience. She realized that sharing her story could help heal her wounds and those of others. As she wiped away the tears from her cheeks, Maya took a deep breath. Okay, let's do it. Rallying the community. The next morning, Nathan and Emily organized a community meeting at their local church, inviting parents, students, teachers, and community leaders. The Williams family wanted to create a safe space where everyone could share their experiences and discuss how they could combat racism within the school system. Word spread quickly, and the turnout was greater than they anticipated. As they arrived at the church, Nathan felt a mix of nerves and excitement. The room was filled with familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and even some teachers from Greenfield Academy. As they settled into their seats, Nathan took a moment to look around, realizing they were not alone in this fight. Thank you all for coming, Nathan began, his voice steady but emotional. We're here to discuss something that affects all of us, racism in our schools and communities. My daughter, Maya, faced a terrible experience at Greenfield Academy, and we want to turn that pain into purpose. Maya stood beside her father, her heart pounding as she prepared to share her story. I used to love school, she started, her voice trembling. But now I feel scared. I don't understand why someone would want to hurt me because of who I am. As she spoke, Maya's confidence grew. The supportive faces in the audience encouraged her to continue. I want to make sure that no one else has to feel this way. I believe we can change things together. Advocacy takes flight. After Maya finished, the room erupted in applause, and tears glistened in the eyes of many attendees. Nathan and Emily exchanged proud glances, knowing that their daughter was beginning to find her voice. Following Maya's heartfelt speech, Several parents and students stepped up to share their own experiences with racism and discrimination. As stories unfolded, the shared pain transformed into a collective determination. One mother spoke about her son being bullied for his accent. Another father shared how his daughter felt invisible in a classroom where diversity was often overlooked. Each story was met with nods of empathy and understanding, creating a powerful atmosphere of solidarity. Motivated by the outpouring of support, Nathan proposed actionable steps to address the issues they had uncovered. We need to take this momentum and turn it into action. Let's form a task force dedicated to creating an inclusive environment at Greenfield Academy and throughout our community, he suggested. The idea was met with enthusiastic approval. Parents and teachers volunteered to be part of the task force, pledging to work together on initiatives like cultural sensitivity training, inclusive curricula, and mentorship programs for students of color. Turning pain into purpose. In the weeks that followed, the Williams family poured their hearts into the advocacy work. Nathan and Emily organized workshops, bringing in experts to educate parents and staff about racism and its effects on children. Maya participated in discussions with her peers, encouraging them to stand up against injustice and support one another. Maya's courage inspired other students, who began to share their own experiences and stand together against discrimination. They organized events celebrating diversity, highlighting different cultures, and fostering empathy among classmates. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere at Greenfield Academy began to shift. Despite their progress, Nathan and Emily knew the road ahead would not be easy. They faced resistance from some community members who were uncomfortable discussing these issues. But the Williams family remained undeterred, steadfast in their belief that open conversations were crucial for healing. As Nathan often reminded Maya, the more we talk about these issues, the less power they have over us. We're making a difference, one voice at a time. A beacon of hope. Months later, Greenfield Academy hosted its first Diversity Day, a culmination of the advocacy efforts initiated by the Williams family and the community. The school was alive with excitement as students and parents gathered to celebrate various cultures through food, music, and art. Maya took center stage, a radiant smile on her face as she shared her story one more time, this time filled with hope rather than fear. "We can change the world around us," she declared. "It starts with each of us making an effort to be kind and understanding. Together, we can create a safe space for everyone, no matter their background." As the audience erupted in applause, Nathan and Emily beamed with pride. They knew that Maya had transformed her pain into purpose, and in doing so, she had inspired a movement that would resonate far beyond the walls of Greenfield Academy. With the community's support and their family's unwavering commitment, the Williams had begun to heal. Not just as individuals, but as a collective force, working toward a better future for all children. The journey was far from over, but they faced it together, fueled by love, determination, and the belief that change was possible. As the weeks unfolded, Maya's story continued to resonate within the community. Her bravery had sparked an awareness, and her family's efforts had begun to create tangible changes, not only in the school, but also in the broader neighborhood. Maya's journey had grown beyond just addressing her own pain. It was now about laying the groundwork for a school and community culture that valued inclusivity and respect. Maya found herself at the center of a newfound mission. She joined her parents at community meetings, even helping lead a few discussions about empathy and cultural sensitivity. Maya started sharing her story openly, determined to let others know that prejudice, no matter how subtle, needed to be challenged. Nathan and Emily stood proudly by her side, providing her with guidance and love as she navigated her new role. The more Maya shared her experiences, the more other students began to approach her, confiding their own stories of bullying, discrimination, and isolation. Some students spoke of feeling sidelined for how they looked, others for their accents or traditions, and a few even talked about the pain of having their heritage dismissed. Maya listened intently, realizing that her story was just one piece of a much larger tapestry of challenges that students in her community faced. Feeling empowered, Maya decided to organize a student-led group at Greenfield Academy called Voices Unite. The group aimed to provide a safe, open space for students to share their experiences, support each other, and work toward fostering an environment free of judgment and hostility. She was surprised by the number of students who attended the first meeting. Their discussions were raw and heartfelt, a testament to the pain many had carried silently. As Voices Unite gained momentum, the Greenfield Academy administration took notice. The principal, Mr. Roberts, reached out to Maya's family, expressing interest in partnering with the group to expand its impact. Although initially hesitant due to the school's failure to address Ms. Hayes' actions quickly, Nathan and Emily ultimately agreed. They saw it as a meaningful step toward long-term, systemic change within the school. Together, they launched a series of workshops that encouraged empathy, respect, and active listening among students and staff alike. The workshops were co-led by students from Voices Unite, including Maya, who began speaking confidently in front of her peers, sharing both her pain and her hopes for the future. Each session featured interactive exercises that challenged students to reflect on their own behaviors and consider how they might contribute to a safer, more respectful environment. The initiative quickly became a success, and Voices Unite grew into a powerful platform that offered mentorship, peer support, and even cultural appreciation events. What began as Maya's personal battle had evolved into a lasting legacy of empowerment and community strength. Maya's story and her family's dedication inspired neighboring schools to look inward as well. Soon, Greenfield Academy's initiative expanded, with local community centers hosting Voices Unite sessions and inviting parents and students alike to participate in open conversations. The story of Maya's resilience and her parents' relentless advocacy caught the attention of the local media, which highlighted their journey as a model of courage and positive change. Through her pain, Maya had discovered a resilience and purpose she hadn't known before. Her commitment to justice had transformed not only her school, but had created a ripple effect throughout the community. Students began to take pride in their identities, celebrating each other's differences rather than judging them. Teachers grew more attentive, recognizing that creating a supportive classroom environment went beyond academic excellence. Months later, Maya was invited to speak at the district-wide anti-racism conference. Standing in front of a room filled with students, parents, educators, and community leaders, Maya reflected on her journey. Her voice was steady, confident, and full of hope as she shared her story once more, her words resonating throughout the room. "I used to think that what happened to me was a sign that I didn't belong," she said. "But I've learned that when we stand together, we can change the world around us. This isn't just my story. It's ours, and it's proof that we are stronger when we fight for each other." The audience erupted into applause, and as Maya looked out at the crowd, she knew this was just the beginning. Her voice, strong, clear, and full of purpose, was now a part of the larger story of unity and resilience within her community. Nathan and Emily, watching from the audience, held hands, their hearts swelling with pride. In Maya's strength, they saw their own, knowing that as a family they had turned a moment of darkness into a lifetime of purpose and advocacy. Months later, Maya found herself standing on the brightly lit stage of Greenfield Academy's auditorium, her heart thudding with excitement. She looked out over the crowd of students, parents, and teachers gathered in the audience, each one a small part of the story that had helped her family turn their pain into progress. As she accepted the award for leadership in promoting inclusion and kindness, a quiet murmur of pride and respect spread through the crowd. In the audience, Nathan and Emily watched their daughter with tears in their eyes. This wasn't just a moment of recognition. It was a testament to the journey Maya had endured and the strength she had found along the way. Nathan squeezed Emily's hand as he whispered, "She's not just surviving, she's becoming a leader." After the award ceremony, Maya's classmates approached her one by one, congratulating her and sharing how she had inspired them. Some were from Voices Unite, the group she'd started to give students a voice, but others were students who had once sat quietly in the background, unsure of where they fit in. They now saw Maya as a role model and a reminder that speaking up for themselves and each other was not only brave, but transformative. In the months following Maya's experience, Greenfield Academy had undergone a significant transformation. The school now required all teachers and staff to complete comprehensive training on cultural sensitivity, empathy, and creating inclusive spaces for all students. The curriculum itself had changed as well. Students were introduced to lessons about diverse histories and cultures, giving them a deeper appreciation for each other's backgrounds and experiences. Maya's principal, Mr. Roberts, had worked closely with the Williams family and other parents to foster an environment where students could feel safe and valued. He encouraged Maya to continue her work with Voices Unite, and the school supported her efforts by providing resources and even inviting guest speakers to reinforce the importance of empathy and inclusivity. The ripple effect extended beyond the school walls. Other schools in the district took note of Greenfield's efforts, and some adopted similar programs and policies, inspired by Maya's story and her family's advocacy. Nathan and Emily were invited to share their journey at parent meetings and conferences, reminding others that every child deserved to feel seen, valued, and protected. As Maya moved through her school years, she continued to find strength and joy in the community she had helped create. With each passing year, her voice grew more confident, her vision clearer. She remained dedicated to making her school a place where every student felt they belonged. When she wasn't organizing events for Voices Unite, she was mentoring younger students, helping them find their own voices, and encouraging them to speak up for what they believed in. In the broader community, Maya's story resonated far beyond her school. Her bravery had inspired new discussions about kindness, respect, and standing up against injustice. At events and conferences, Maya began speaking to larger audiences, sharing her experience to ignite empathy and unity among her peers and adults alike. For Nathan and Emily, watching their daughter blossom into a leader was a powerful reminder of the strength they had built together as a family. Their hearts swelled with pride every time they saw Maya reach out to help others, knowing that her experiences had shaped her into the compassionate, resilient person she was becoming. In many ways, Maya's story had given the family a mission they hadn't anticipated: to advocate not only for their daughter, but for all children who might feel overlooked or undervalued. They continued to work with local organizations and schools, hoping to create lasting change in their community and beyond. And through it all, they remained a united front, driven by the knowledge that their journey had transformed each of them in profound ways. On the evening of her high school graduation, Maya stood once again on the stage at Greenfield Academy, now as valedictorian. Her speech was a heartfelt tribute to her journey and a call to action for her classmates. "Every one of us has a story," she said, looking out over the sea of faces in front of her. "We have a choice in how we tell it and how we allow it to shape our future. Let's use our voices to lift each other up, to create spaces where everyone feels welcome, and to never shy away from standing up for what's right." The audience erupted into applause, filled with pride and admiration. Nathan and Emily beamed from their seats, knowing that their daughter had found her way not only to healing, but to hope and purpose. As they left the auditorium together, Maya walking between them, Nathan and Emily felt a renewed sense of gratitude and determination. They had been through a storm, but together, they had emerged stronger, with a new purpose that would guide them into the future. The Williams family had not only rebuilt their trust and sense of belonging, but it also created a legacy of resilience, compassion, and hope that would live on in Maya's story and in the lives of those she touched. Maya's story transformed not only her life, but her entire community. What began as an experience of pain and betrayal turned into a powerful journey of healing and empowerment. The Williams family didn't just fight for justice, they ignited a spark in others, showing that even in the face of prejudice, love and determination can break down walls and build something stronger. Greenfield Academy was no longer just a school. It became a symbol of change, a place that now stood as a reminder of the courage it takes to face what's wrong and the resilience it takes to make things right. For Maya, it was more than a victory. It was the beginning of a lifelong mission to help others speak up, fight back, and never feel alone in their struggles. That night, as she stood on stage receiving her award, Maya's parents watched with tear-filled eyes, knowing they had helped their daughter reclaim her voice, and in doing so, had given her, and countless others, the power to stand tall against injustice. If this story inspired you, join us. If Maya's journey touched your heart, subscribe to Vibe Stories and join our community in celebrating stories of resilience, compassion, and hope. Together, we can make sure voices like Maya's are heard, shining a light on the courage that can change lives. Let's continue to inspire, connect, and create a world where every child feels safe and valued. Subscribe to Vibe Stories for more stories that matter, and help us spread hope, one story at a time.